promised a long time ago, I am putting together an episode for you guys to talk about this one's livestock guardian dog training. I'm gonna feed her treats to try to keep her in the frame because she's way cuter to look at. Now, Ladybird, if you don't know, is our 9-month-old Turkish Boz Shepherd mix. She's got some Great Pyrenees in her too, and Maremma. If you know what that is, those are the more traditional, like big, white, fluffy farm dogs that you see out with livestock, like sheep and things like that. So she's got a little bit of those things in her, but she's primarily a Turkish Boz Shepherd. If you don't know what that is, they are massive, and they are also just basically a breed that is used for livestock guardian protection, right? So this is Ladybird, and we brought her home when she was about 6 months old, and she is roughly just over 9 months old now. So we've had her for about 3 months. She's super settled in and acquainted with the farm at this point, and I am getting ready to have a baby, but we are also sort of progressing her training at this point. Now, before she came to live with us, she was living in the back of a horse trailer with her litter. Her previous owner said that they didn't have adequate fencing to keep the litter contained. They kept her in the back of a trailer, and I had been entertaining the idea of having a livestock guardian dog because I wanted more protection for our farm, but I was also like, I don't really know. I found out about this litter, and probably about a month later, we brought her home. So here we are committed. She's been living her best life ever since then. Now, she was already 85 pounds when we brought her home. And again, that was 3 months ago. I took her to the vet for a checkup, and she had like some weird issue with her foot, like a fungus infection. When she got here, so I took her to the vet. She was already 85 pounds, and she has grown significantly since that time. So I'm gonna assume she's closer to 100 at this point. She's big and she's strong, but she's still a super duper puppy, just giant silly puppy. Now, Turkish Boz Shepherds were bred to fight wolves, and that partially explains why they were bred to be so big. They're considered a giant breed, so she's on a special puppy formula. She's on special joint supplements to help support her joints as she grows, but we expect her to be about 150 pounds when she's full grown. Now let's get into the meat of it. So why do we have a livestock guardian dog? Well, I wanted more protection for the farm. We have goats and chickens, not a lot, but we have enough that they tend to attract predators, and we do have predators in this area. So I'm sort of always on my toes and worried about something happening to our more vulnerable livestock. We have donkeys and horses too, but of course I don't worry about them getting eaten by foxes, right? We have Brodie, who you're gonna see pop in and out of the frame, and you've met him before. He's about 7 years old. He's like a border collie lab mix. Gosh, she's so big. But he's really more of a house dog. He does an excellent job patrolling for us. Like when the chickens are free ranging, we'll just throw him outside with them, and he does a really good job of deterring predators. We've seen him chase fox away, but really he's getting kind of older. He's slowing down a lot. Here he is right here. Brodie. And we just really wanted him to have, number one, a friend. Our other dog passed away last year. He was almost 18 years old. But number two, he really just wants to be with us. So he'll tolerate being outside while we're inside for so long, and then he's like barking at the door like, let me in. So we wanted somebody that was going to be outside for more consistently and for protective reasons, again, for our goats and chickens primarily. Now, how do you train a livestock guardian dog? This is the question I get a lot, and it depends on who you ask, because it turns out, as with anything else on the internet, there are tons of opinions out there about what's the best way to do it. So today, I'm going to share with you, hopefully, how we're training this dog, and one of the more common ways that you'll see it be done, and how we're doing it differently, basically. Now, in my mind, I thought that she was going to be outside 24/7 from the beginning. And a lot of you are probably like, yeah, obviously, because she's gonna be an outside guardian dog. Well, it turns out that is not necessarily the only way to train them, right? They're gonna be outside dogs. It makes sense that they get used to being outside sooner rather than later. But I learned of another way that feels better to me and is more aligned with how both my husband and I tend to operate when we're handling and training animals. And so that's the strategy that we have adopted with her since bringing her home. I wanted to give her more support, more structure, and more hands-on training And it turns out there's a whole lot of training pages out there and professionals who not only agree with that approach, but will give you tons of free resources to support you as the person as you go along. Now, understand that we brought her home again when she was 6 months old, so still a baby. And Ladybird today, she's sleeping next to the camera now so you can't see her, is 9 months old, so still a baby. And they act like babies. Surprise. Yeah, she's 100 pounds, but she's still a baby. She came home and I had like a fenced in area next to our house. I had it all worked out in my mind that that's where she was gonna be when she was unsupervised. We had a very expensive giant crate to accommodate her size. We put that in the garage. When we brought her home, it was still pretty chilly here in Colorado. So she was gonna be crated in the garage at night. So I had all of these plans for how we were gonna handle and train this dog. Basically, not having her in the house at all and just, again, doing the 24/7 outside only dog thing. She was having none of that. I pivoted for you so she's back in the camera. And I'm talking crying, barking, shrieking like she was dying nonstop anytime she was away from us at all. It was crazy. Yes, bless you. You did. Major separation anxiety, and I mean just complete panic at night. So I'm like, okay, this isn't gonna work. I feel like I'm traumatizing this animal. What do I do? So I go back to my training pages and start troubleshooting through what other people have said to do, basically, and started asking questions. And I read some things that really just stopped me in my tracks and made me completely reconsider how we were training this dog. I read that, you know, when you take a puppy from their litter, from their mom, it's basically being kidnapped by aliens, right? They don't know where they are, they don't know who they're with, they don't know who their people are, they miss their litter, they miss their mother, they don't know what's expected of them, and at the base of all of it, it's fear, right? They're scared. That's why they're having all of these crazy behaviors. And of course they have separation fear and anxiety because they've never been apart from essentially their family before. And then we're like, here, come live in this other person's house now, and they're speaking another language and you have no idea what's going on, and you'll figure it out, it's fine. But first and foremost, more important than anything else, I read that they need to be with their family, they need to bond with their family, and they need to come to trust that their family is taking care of them, like we become their family, right? They need lots of attention, love, support, structure, all of the things that you would give any other pet you're bringing into your home. You should also do that for your livestock guardian dog. They are looking for their shepherd, so to speak. Leaving her alone was, you guessed it, not recommended. In fact, they said to bring her inside my house. The idea is, how will she know what is good behavior with livestock? How will she know what is good behavior on the farm? How will she know what her expectations are if she's not with you all of the time learning those expectations? Just again, like you would do with any other dog. And dogs, even if we play off of that analogy, that work with shepherds full time, right? You think about the super traditional example of one that lives, that a dog that just like literally lives with a flock of sheep, for example. They are with their shepherd full time for an extended period of time to learn what the job is. So they spend all of their time with the shepherd, they observe the shepherd doing the job, they do the job with him, there is correction when there needs to be correction, there's praise when they're doing the job correctly, and over time, they grow into that role instinctually with that structure, and then they're able to take the place of that shepherd when the shepherd's not around, but the dog has been trained to do that job. First, they must be with the shepherd. And now I even on my social media, when I've shared a little bit about Ladybird, like when we brought her home and people were like, oh, it's fine, you know, these kinds of dogs instinctually know what to do. And that's actually a really common misconception, and one that can get you into a lot of trouble, and one that can get the dogs into a lot of trouble too, because they don't instinctually know what to do unless they are taught. I read stories every single day on these training pages where dogs are brought home, even puppies, but especially like older puppies are brought home and they're thrown out with the livestock, and they do things like kill the livestock, or they play with it so roughly that the livestock dies, things like that. And then they're like, well, what do we do? Well, you remove them from the livestock until you're able to be with them to train them on being with the animals. So all of this just made so much sense to me. We pivoted, and here's puppy. We pivoted and we took on a different training strategy. Ladybird moved in with us, literally moved into the house with us, which she thinks is great fun. And oh boy, did our friends and family jump all over that. So yeah. I brought this dog home and I'm like, it's gonna be an outside dog. Everybody calm down. I know I'm pregnant. And I lasted one day, one night, I get it, and she was brought into my house. But there is a method to the madness. You can see where I'm going with this. One thing about livestock guardian dogs are notoriously untrained. When you have a 100 to 200 pound dog that doesn't even know basic obedience or can't be put in the car to be taken to the vet in case of an injury, like, you can see where that's an issue. And what will happen is, and I see this again on these pages that I follow now, these dogs, if something ever was to happen and they end up in shelters, they are really difficult to find families for. There are cases in shelters all the time for various reasons. They have zero skills. There's no house training, there's no basic obedience, there's a lot of times no socialization that's happened. So oftentimes, sadly, a lot of these dogs end up being euthanized because they're also massive. Now, another common scenario that I actually see quite a bit with these livestock guardian dogs is they become injured, especially ones that are like on huge properties protecting from large animals, large predators. They become injured doing their job. And when that happens, sometimes they have to be taken to the vet. And let's say that there's surgery that has to happen or some kind of vet care that limits them from being able to just go back outside. Let's say they have to be crated or they have to be kept in the house for a while. Well, if this dog has never had the opportunity to learn that or to do those things, that becomes even more traumatic and stressful for the animal, and they oftentimes end up re-injuring themselves. So I'll stop harping, but you get the idea. Exposure to car rides, to vet visits, to coming in and out of the house as appropriate. All those things are good preventative strategies to help set your animal up for success in case there's ever a time that you don't have them anymore. Of course, our plan is always to have her, but what if something happens? Then she needs to be well-rounded enough that she has the opportunity to find another family. Again, that's definitely not the plan, but we want to set her up for success and ourselves for success too, having her on as our full-time staff member. You cooking. All right, we're gonna walk and talk. Come here, sister. Show off some of her leash training. So we teach Ladybird everything, not just how to protect livestock, but also how to be a family dog. At the end of the day, we don't live on hundreds and hundreds of acres out in the middle of nowhere. We live on 10. We have lots of visitors. We have little kids running around. We have friends of our little kids, more little kids running around, and we need her to be able to protect without taking everything as a threat, even though, yes, we want her to protect. So puppy training began immediately. We're doing a little leash training actually while we're doing this episode right now. I don't have her on a leash very often. She's doing pretty good. She's not resisting, which is great. But puppy training meaning all of the things like obedience training, leash training, sit, down, stay. No is a big one. Girlfriend does not speak hardly any English at all, and no is still very hard for her. Livestock guardian dogs, I will tell you, are notorious for hearing your command and then sort of taking time to consider whether or not it's worth their time to follow through with that. And so recalls are a very important one that we started working on with her right away. Like, come here, are one of those commands that they may or may not listen to depending on what the situation is and whether or not it's worth their time. I can kind of respect them for that, but also I need her to mind me so I'm not chasing her across multiple pastures. That does not sound like fun to me. Now, house training was one I was not super happy about because I was not in my mind planning on potty training, but actually she's done really well, especially for an older puppy. She more or less picked up on it right away, and we still just keep a close eye on her to prevent any accidents from happening. We did continue to try to crate for a while, although it was just like a major source of anxiety for her, and we discovered that she slept better, therefore we slept better, if we let her just be close to us. And now as a human mom, this is another thing that resonated with me because I believe very strongly in going to your babies at night. We co-sleep, we do all of those things. And so as a baby animal, I can totally get that nighttime can be very scary for them, and having that little bit of extra support was totally fine with us. Now, as far as transitioning this dog outside eventually, a lot of you are gonna wonder about that. Yes, it's possible, and it is part of the training plan. The most common thread that I've seen on these training pages are that they will let you know when they're ready to do that full time. And that's usually around the time that they are fully mature, which is closer to, I don't know, 18 months to 2 years, or around the time that they are more fully independent with livestock, I should say too. It just sort of depends on the animal. At 9 months old, she's definitely not ready yet. She's definitely nowhere near maturity at this point. And in fact, she herself still needs protection from predators. But I do trust that over time, that she will start the process of wanting to be outside more often. In fact, I see that even now, like on nicer days when it's not so hot. I can't really get her to come inside, which has been really interesting because my other house dogs I've had have never been like that. Like, she prefers to find a shady spot under a tree, and she's good to chill there for a while. So already that's fairly different from a regular dog. She does fairly well on car rides, although she's a puker. So she gets really anxious and will puke, I guess, on longer car rides. She hasn't done that in a really long time. She has bonded beautifully with our other dog, Brodie. They are the absolute best friends, which has been really cool to see because I think he really missed having companionship of another dog. She loves our kids. This was a really cool characteristic that I read of the Turkish Boz Shepherd breed. She's very tolerant of their affections, and she will generally position herself near my kids, even when they're playing outside or wherever they are in the house. That's kind of where she wants to be, and puts herself at like an advantageous position to be able to kind of watch the area around them. So I really like that about her too. Kind of doing that now, surveying the house and wondering where everybody's at. And again, as far as guarding, she might be close to 100 pounds, but she is still a baby herself. So at this point, she's not guarding anything at all. Baby, remember. When she first arrived, this dog was terrified of everything. We joked about it quite a bit because I was like, we have brought home the most scared guardian dog that has ever existed. But in the past 3 months, with having our support, with having our structure, with having some consistent training, she's actually really kind of growing into her confidence and turning into a really good dog. She would tremble and cower. Everything was scary to her. The TV, she would run from it when we turned it on. Household objects, she ran from when she came in the house. And even to this day, she doesn't really play with toys unless she's trying to destroy them, but that's been a fairly new development too. It took her 3 months to get to that point. She has a pretty scary bark, which we kind of love. And when she's tethered out front, people definitely think twice before they approach our house. I've seen multiple terrified expressions on people's faces walking up. And the irony is she's not always barking. She's just a lot of times laying and observing and watching quietly, but that's almost more intimidating somehow. So barking is definitely a trait of livestock guardian dogs, right? Because they alert you to danger, but when you're already present, I have read where they just do the stare and watch game, and sometimes that can be more alarming for people that don't know them, especially at their size. And so I mentioned that sometimes she's tethered in our front yard. The only time that we have her tethered at this point is when the chickens are free ranging, because she is not trained fully on chickens at this point. But basically, that's kind of the best summary I have for you right now. We pivoted from planning 24/7 outside dog to having her with us basically all the time. She's going to be inside and outside until she's ready to be outside 24/7. And where I was planning on just doing livestock training, now we're having to do all the different trainings, which at the end of the day makes way more sense anyway, and we're pretty cool with that because we want her to be well-rounded and a functional member of our family. And again, next week we're jumping into her livestock training, so you don't want to miss that. Like and subscribe while you're here so you'll see when the episode drops, and I'll show you how we started her, what we sort of do on a daily basis. Daily is generous, I wouldn't say daily, but what we try to do with her regularly and how it's going so far. All right, I'll see you next week.